Terraform Labs says the arrest warrant issued by South Korean authorities for Do Kwon is an overreach, according to the Wall Street Journal. So a spokesperson for the company said Luna wasn't a security, meaning it doesn't fall under South Korea's capital markets law. They added that the case has been highly politicized and demonstrates unfairness and a failure to uphold basic rights under Korean law. Zach, I'm going to pass this one off to you to begin with. I think we've come full circle, right? I think clear regulation might have prevented a statement like this from being said in the media while someone like Do Kwon is on the run. But what do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think it goes back to what we're talking about with like the CFTC and commodities versus securities, right? So like, commodities are like gold. They just exist in the world and they can be traded as such. Securities are basically like, a small slice of a company, right? Or a project. And I think there's a lot of tokens in the space that are similar to that. They're sort of proxy securities, right? And that's the thing that the big fight has been about. That Gary Gensler is asserting that many of these things seem security-like. People in the space are saying, no, they just exist. They're adequately decentralized enough where they just sort of exist in the world and should be treated as such. So I think that's sort of like the big picture thing. Whether or not regulation solves the Do Kwon drama mystery tour, I don't think it does. I think at this point we're seeing all parties sort of, specifically Do Kwon, lean into sort of maximum entertainment value here, right? Where in the world is Do Kwon? What are we doing? Is this overreach? Should we comply? What's happening? Are we helping out this investigation? It's just kind of getting crazy at this point. So I don't know. This to me like adds to the entertainment value of this little update, but is it a material update on what this story will ultimately become? I don't know. I really don't know. But Will, tossing it to you.
I want to add a quick thing in before you take it, Will. That image of Do Kwon that looks like he's on a Zoom call really seemed like we were going to be like, oh, and here's Do Kwon now joining Zach. Doesn't it look like he's just joining us? Anyways, Will.
No, Zach, I like what you said. This doesn't really seem like a material update, right? To me, this may be the most material part about it is like Terraform Labs is staying behind Do Kwon. Like they're not necessarily like turning around and attacking him, though I'm sure a lot of people have left the organization, have been leaking information. But the fact that the organization still is around, they say they're defending Terraform Labs in a lot of different jurisdictions, that is notable. The one thing that I'll add here is it is interesting to read their report or their answer back, and they're saying like, we didn't break any securities laws in South Korea. And to some degree, there's a little credence to that, right? Because the Terra ecosystem had been operating in South Korea for quite a while before any of this pump and dump, right? So you can imagine a world where this hadn't happened, where Terra didn't explode upward and where the Luna stablecoin hadn't exploded, and it's just business as usual, right? The South Korean government didn't seem to care too much beforehand, but once the whole thing went belly up and a lot of people lost money, that's the only point they started to care. And that mirrors a lot of enforcement action we see over here in the United States, where they don't really go after anybody until everyone's harmed, right? They wait around, they're okay watching. We've even seen this with Bitcoin and Ethereum, where they've sort of just kind of watched it from the sidelines and it never went south. So they just stuck with it. In this case, other way around, right? So I don't know, there's a little bit to their claim there. Of course, I don't think it's enough to keep Do Kwon or anyone from Terraform Labs out of going to a court hearing, but we'll see about that. Zach, to you.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of the way it works, right? Like, until the building collapses, no one is necessarily knocking down the door of the owner to make sure that they've been up to code, right? Like, and what we have here with Terra is arguably just a massive structural collapse, right? The building was made in such a way that there was this fatal flaw that could bring it all crumbling down. Now, was that by design? Was there something fraudulent there? Or was it simply a dynamic that had yet to be probed in the marketplace at scale? And that's what led to this collapse. And I think that you could argue that, hey, okay, that's what these, authorities are looking to find out. They're looking to knock on the door of Do Kwon and say, okay, did you check the foundation, right? Was the steel up to grade, right? And I think that, the fact that it happened after the collapse doesn't shock me, right? It doesn't shock me that the Korean authorities, weren't looking into this while it was still riding high. So maybe that's just the way of the world, both in physical building regulation and in financial market structure. But this to me is kind of reaching a little bit of like sideshow proportions, where we're sort of seeing these pronouncements and it's becoming much more public. Whereas previously, I think Terraform Labs and Do Kwon specifically were being very quiet. Now we're sort of seeing this, a little bit of this braggadocio, this little bit of brashness that we recall from the run up in Luna's, striking growth. We're seeing a little bit more of that come back into the fold. And certainly people are much more captivated now. So I think that's why we're going to see some headlines like this in the coming weeks.